We're going to be as judicious with our time as we can be, but without stepping away from this fantastic conversation. So allow me to introduce myself. If you don't know me, my name is Marty Malloy. I am the Chief of Staff and Catalyst at Tamin. And we are so excited to invite all of you into this webinar on professional mastery today. We have assembled a illustrious group of CEOs to talk to you, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I want to handle just a couple of quick housekeeping items. As Tamin CEO Mike Mangos, who spoke up a little bit earlier, just mentioned, I encourage everyone to open the chat. Whenever Tamin does a webinar or a meetup or any gathering of this kind, we really encourage folks to have an active chat on the side. That is specifically for questions, but also for getting to know each other and introducing yourselves. The other thing that we like to encourage folks to do is to use the reactions at the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom. You'll see the little smiley face and the plus. Feel free to use that if there's something that you like, you want to applaud or give a thumbs up to. Those are always great, and I know the speakers will appreciate that as well. A couple of other quick housekeeping items. I want to make sure that everyone who's joined understands that we are recording. So just know that, and if you have any issues, you don't need to share your video if you don't want to, but we don't want anyone to be surprised by that. Also, we do have live transcription provided through otter.ai. You can open that up, and it's a nice way to follow the speakers if that's your choice. Finally, we ask that if when we open this up to some Q&A towards the end of the conversation, but also for our speakers and moderators, for those folks who might be joining who are visually impaired or blind, just introducing yourself. This is Mike, this is Neil, this is Michelle, just to give a little bit additional context for those folks who might be listening in. So with that, we are so excited about this conversation around professional mastery. Knowing that you don't know, I can tell you that these three CEOs that we have here today have stories and insights to share that I think are truly human and inspiring, and I'm really excited to hear the conversation. So I'd like to hand it over to our moderator, the fabulous Liza Grant. Liza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marty, for the floor. And I can confirm that you are correct. I am Liza Grant, and I do document accessibility work for Tamin Inc., which I love. Quick plug for accessibility work. If you have an inkling, I would suggest it. It's very rewarding. Now on to business. So before I introduce the panelists, I did want to take a moment to define, just for this conversation here in this little webinar, what we're talking about, what we're thinking about when we say mastery. So for our purposes here, we're defining mastery as combining foresight, confidence, contextualization, as well as utilization of a subject area. And we'll go ahead and put that down in the chat as sort of a quick reference as well. Speaking of the chat, please feel free to drop questions in there for our panelists. You can do that at any time throughout the discussion. You don't have to wait until the very end, although we will have a discussion period at the end as well. Feel free to drop those questions in as they come to you. We would also really love to hear the thoughts and the different perspectives that we have in the audience today. So we'd love for you to share your own answers in the chat to the questions that we're asking. We want this to be conversational, so we encourage you to chime in whenever you feel inspired. So without further ado, let's bring up our panelists for today's discussion on professional mastery, knowing that you don't know. So here we have our three CEOs of the moment. Michael Mangos, CEO of Tamin Inc., Michelle Freeman, CEO of Witty Gritty, and Neil Harner, CEO of Inverse Paradox. Wanted to thank you all for taking the time to speak with us today. Really appreciate it. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourselves and your work. And Mike, feel free to start us off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so my name is Mike Mangos. I started Tamin with a business partner of mine about 14 years ago. But I've been in IT and technology for 25 years plus. And most recently, the most recent thing I've tried to master is digital accessibility. It's become a big part of our practice at Tamin. And it's been a really interesting ride to try to master yet another thing. So that's just a little bit about me. Michelle, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Michael. I'm Michelle Freeman. I'm the CEO of Witty Gritty, and we came way before Gritty, the Flyers mascot, for those who are wondering. We are Philly-based. I'm born and raised in Philly, and we're a community-focused, civic-focused marketing events agency here in the area. And so the thing that I've been trying to master, I think, ultimately is sort of the in-person experience. So not so much direct event planning, but just the concept of an experience and being able to deliver intentional, meaningful experiences to people. So that's a little bit about me, and I will pass it to Neil.
Cool, awesome, thank you. So I'm Neil Harner. I'm the founder and CEO of Inverse Paradox. We're a small digital agency based right outside of Philadelphia in the Bucks County area. The company was started back in 2007, kind of evolving from a freelance identity, and then started quickly building up into a more of a full service digital agency, mostly focusing in WordPress production and then a lot of e-commerce work, which is really where my career started. In addition to all of that, I also am the program director and a full-time professor for Thomas Jefferson University, which is actually their East Falls campus. It used to be Philadelphia University, and generations before that, it was the Philadelphia College of Textiles and Sciences, where I'm the program director of a Master's of Science in User Experience and Interaction Design program there. Cool.
Yeah, just a little fancy stuff.
Thank you all.
That's my fun job.
For letting us get to know you a little bit. So let's jump right into our first question. So we're kind of going broad here. In y'all's opinions, does one pursue mastery, or does mastery sort of just happen over time? What do y'all think about that? Michelle, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think it's a mix of both. I think for my own journey, I probably realized it. So, thinking about the concept of mastery now, as an adult, about 20 years into my career, I'm realizing all of the things that I have come to master, but I probably would have done myself a service if I had focused on that a little bit more going into it. So I think it is a bit of both.
Good to know. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Does it happen, or do you pursue it? So I think it depends on who you are, honestly. For the incredibly curious, my experience with sort of the dozens and dozens of employees I've had over the years, and for myself, where I'm naturally curious, I find that I approach mastery very unintentionally. And I sort of wake up one day and discover, hey, I think I've become a master in this. Like, I'm kind of the person who people go to for answers, and I'm predicting the future, right? But that doesn't mean that it can't be cultivated. It absolutely can. Just that I think that curious individuals end up pursuing it sometimes without intention.
Very good perspective. Neil, do you agree or have a different take?
Well, yeah, no. So I definitely agree with Michael. I think for me personally, it's definitely that it sort of dawns on me and go, wow, I know this subject really, really well. I didn't see that happening. And I also have this sort of personality where if something of interest hits me, I go down these deep rabbit holes that I can't stop with until I know everything I can about the subject, even to the point that there's certain things that I'm like, I'm not even going to spend my time researching this because I know what will happen. It will drown my life for the next month because I just get obsessed. But also then on the other side, whether it's employees or some of my grad students, for them, it is very conscious. They say, you know, if you're entering, for example, like a graduate program, they're saying, this is a thing I want to be a master of. I mean, that's the very nature of the program, right? So I think that it depends on personality. I think it depends on learning styles. And then that's kind of, you know, drives you towards that sort of outcome, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think if I can, I'm going to ping pong off that if that's okay, Neil.
Yeah.
That you know, I haven't mastered many things. I think it's like when we talk about mastery, it's not just I know a lot about a thing, right? A lot of people know a lot about a lot of different things. I can probably count on one hand the number of things that I would consider that I've mastered, right? But in each of those cases, I go out to find somebody who knows more than I do about it because I have a question that I don't have an answer to. And sometimes I find that like there really aren't many people that I can go to that can give me that answer. And I realize, wow, I'm actually asking questions in this space that not that they're necessarily unique, but just that, you know, I would probably put myself in that category of subject matter experts in that thing where I didn't realize that it happened. You know, I sort of just by accident discovered that, oh, there really is nobody to ask this of. I'm going to have to invent a solution here. You know, have you found, either of you have found that same thing happen to you?
For sure. And I feel like, you know, you have to get scrappy with your research methods. You have to lean on other people that you might consider being masters in maybe related spaces. So you know, I've definitely been in situations where I can dig deep and ping pong around to get the answers I need. And then I'm basically putting what I think is a solution or an answer on the table and saying, this is what I believe. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. But basically, until someone proves me wrong, which I have a willingness to be proven wrong, that's what I'm operating with, you know?
Mm-hmm. Michelle?
I'd say it's interesting because I kind of like think about the work that I've been doing and how it's easiest to label it as events and marketing, but really when I look at it and think about it and think about this exact question, I realize it's really about exploring and understanding the concept of community and what that means, and then really boils down to people. So I realized like over time when you're in certain rooms or being asked certain things, I'm like, oh, I know people really well. And I know how to think about how to get them together and corral them. And I realize it's not quite as easy to label that set of skills. And that's like the space I think that that I realize it's almost like this sort of like repetitive pattern, right? When the same thing keeps coming up over and over again, it's like, oh, I might be onto something here. And it seems like I have good feedback when I'm sharing my thoughts on this space, right? So it's just interesting to think about in my mind, almost like the sort of more tangible skills to say, you know, oh, I'm a coder, I'm a programmer, versus like things that feel a little more intangible when it comes to people, you know, and just dealing with and working with and connecting with people.
It's funny that you say that because there are lots of things that I feel that I've mastered, but I can't put a label on the thing that I've mastered. You know, I know Michelle, you and I have talked about this before, like the idea that we feel like we've become masters in business. Doesn't mean we're perfect at it, right? It doesn't mean that like we have all the answers, but like, you know, I gave myself an MBA in the School of Hard Knocks, you know, when it comes to business. And, you know, like when I think about all the things I've learned, there isn't much that I haven't encountered as a business owner over like a 22-year period running my own companies. And so, you know, what do you call that? That's not an MBA. It's not labeled. I'm not a business master. I mean, that sounds almost like too self-congratulatory, right? but yet, there are a lot of people who just haven't had all that experience. And sort of to your question, Liza, like, does this happen over time by itself, or do you pursue it? I didn't pursue becoming like decent at running business or understanding the mechanics of sort of all the facets of a company, but by necessity, I had to learn those things to make it work. And then over time, I realized, gosh, people are coming to me asking for advice on how to make stuff work in their business, and I'm like, maybe I'm a master at this. You know. So it's kind of funny, right? Like are labels important to mastery, you know, or you know, to defining mastery?
Great. answers. Thank you, everybody, for
Yeah.
sharing that. That's super helpful. I wanted to pivot to, we got a question in the chat from Karen Pellegrin, and she brought up imposter syndrome and kind of just if y'all have any stories personally with that, or even anything with, you all have some staff at your companies, anything that you deal with when other people seem to be struggling with it. Whoever feels, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely chime in on that one. So, you know, I have these kind of like two roles. I have my role as a professor and a department head. I have my agency ownership, and I've had other businesses and little things in between. You know, the one that's kind of quirky and out there was when I first started Inverse, we had a lot of additional bandwidth, and we were like, well, what are we going to do with our time? And I used to love craft beer. I still do. Unfortunately, I can't drink as much of it because gluten intolerances and all that. But just like I said, I get that obsessive personality. I started deep diving. I taught myself how to homebrew. I learned everything that there is to know about craft beer. And then we had all this free time at Inverse. And I was like, well, what are we going to do with this free time? And then we had this brilliant idea of let's start a beer magazine. And we started a beer magazine dedicated to Philly craft beer culture. One of my very, very good friends was a partner with me in it. His name's Matt, and it became Philly Beer Scene. And that was in the very early days of Philadelphia craft beer culture. Well, here's this, you know, young 20-year-old guy who's got this magazine that's going out into this very, very like blossoming industry, pretending like he knows everything about beer. And I'm talking to brewers. Next thing you know, I'm meeting, you know, Sam Colgione from Dogfish Head. I'm meeting Jim Cook from at Boston Brewing Company, and I'm meeting like all these players, and it was very, very weird because here I am talking craft beer like I know what I'm talking about with these people that are pros that literally define the industry. Honestly, what I find is that those people that you would categorize as being masters, and you're coming into this like space, I think there are definitely people that maybe have egos and could be pretentious, and you'll encounter those. But I will actually say from my experience, when you come into a space, even if you're sort of having that imposter syndrome, a lot of people are going to embrace you, because if you're entering a space and you're doing something positive and you're advocating for maybe an industry, those people are going to embrace you. And yeah, they might tell you where you're right and wrong in the process, but they're not going to call you out on the floor and be like, yeah, you don't know what's going on, right? So, and I found that in other places too. I found it at the university when I was starting out as a professor. I found it with working with bigger clients than what I was used to as I was growing my agency. But the one that was very, very clear was the beer world, because all those people were fantastic. I mean, it's really a kind of a cool little niche space where, you know, if you're the small guy just getting started, they're picking you up and saying, yeah, cool, how do we make you better, you know?
I like that a lot. Michelle, do you have any insight into imposter syndrome in yourself or others around you?
Sure. I mean, one quick thought is it's so funny how commonplace it is in entrepreneurship to say fake it till you make it, which is actually, I think, an enabler of imposter syndrome.
Right.
When we could just say like, I don't know. Can you explain that to me? Right. But I think we're so conditioned, and myself included, to act like, you know, when you get into a groove of just getting to this point, the mastery of not knowing and asking, I think you definitely have like reached, you know, gotten over the hump of, you know, of on your way to mastery. But the one quick story I was going to say, Neil, as you were talking, I totally forgot about this, but a few years ago, I had the opportunity to work with the M. Night Shyamalan Foundation, and they fund these incredible global leaders who are just doing like incredible work. And, you know, I felt really good and excited about it. I was preparing to help, ironically, because I was helping to get together like a storytelling training and workshop for their leaders. And I'm like, why the hell does M. Night Shyamalan need me to do a storytelling workshop for his leaders, you know? So the night before, I was freaking out. And this was, you know, a few years ago. And I'm like, I don't belong here. Like, why am I in this situation? Because I was reading up on all of the leaders and watching news clips and press clips of them. And I was feeling so overwhelmed. Like this is too much. Like, I don't think I belong here. And then I had to take a step back. Like, there's a reason I'm in this space and I was invited. It's not like somebody felt bad for me and asked me to do this. Like, I'm here for a reason. So I need to also I need to reel it in and like, you know, take my nervousness and try to transfer that into excitement and like own my space. So I'll just say it's kind of even funny to share that out loud because it did happen relatively recently in the last few years, and I've been at this for a while. So I do think, as much as I would want to say that I've totally got rid of imposter syndrome, I certainly have not. I think it shows up in different forms.
Yeah, I'll echo what you both said and try to add to it a little bit from my own lens. Yeah, I feel like I'm an imposter in almost everything that I do. But there's a certain amount of like having mastered some stuff in the past, like at least a couple of things, has given me a lot of self-confidence, even when it's not always warranted sometimes. And that self-confidence, if one can leverage that, to your point, Michelle, being willing to say, I don't know, but you know what? I have enough background and enough momentum and enough confidence, and I'm going to figure that out. You know, less fake it till you make it, and rather just admitting you don't know and projecting that confidence to the person that's asking that you're going to solve them, or you're going to get them from this side of the chasm to that side of the chasm. You may not know exactly how you're going to do that, but you know it's possible. You feel it in your gut. That level of mastery gives you that confidence to be able to do it, right? Just that you don't necessarily have all those answers right away. Like, I know for the things that I feel like I'm a master in, it's the confidence of that I know I'll figure it out as needed, that I think, you know, gives me that security of being a master in that space. So
Great answers. Seemed like you guys didn't fake any of those. You just had them all right at the top of your head because of who you are.
we're all making this up as we go. Okay.
And it sounds great. All right, so let me hone in a little bit for some of these questions. So people, most of them by nature, have a fear and are very sensitive to change in its various forms. So Neil, we talked about this a little bit before. Would you be able to just talk about how you've embraced change in your career and also at Inverse Paradox in order to kind of stay ahead of the curve?
Sure. Well, I mean, ahead, behind, catching up. You know, the thing that you know, kind of struck me about this idea of change was, you know, and I share the story, and it's just small, but a few years ago, I had one of my guys have a bit of a conflict because he just kind of said, hey, you know, it feels like nothing's consistent. You know, I want consistency, and that was like the word he was using. And it took me a while to realize that he was having a trouble seeing like how the company was growing, evolving, and changing around him. And some of it was, you know, a result of maybe economic impact, the ebb and flow of the type of work we were doing with clients. Some of it was changes in technology, us trying to make processes better, and some of it was experimental. And it kind of made me realize that in order to be successful, you know, change is the consistency, and change needs to be part of the DNA. You know, if you can build your culture around this idea that everything can change and never be stagnant or never be so locked into a process that's inflexible, then the more you get your teams accustomed to that, the more that you can continue to move things forward. And I think that in my experience, where I've seen some of my clients, you know, struggle, that inflexibility. There's an unwillingness to change. They create a playbook and they say, we're going to stick to the playbook. We're not going to move this playbook. And I go, it's not law, right? So there's always going to be situations around it, and you should be constantly reevaluating those things in order to say, are we doing the best job we possibly can, or are there conditions outside of our control that gives us reason to play outside of you know, those sort of specifications. So my own opinion is that change is inevitable. And if you make change part of your culture and part of how you operate, that's ultimately going to lead you to better success down the road.
Great answer. Would you think that it's like a necessary thing if you have a successful company and you're not really changing? Would you consider that a successful company?
I mean, I think that's a tough one. I think it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're in a space and you have a company or a product or service where this is what we do, this is what we've done for generations, and it's what people depend on, and you can be that cut and dry, yeah, cool. But I also think that there's a lot of businesses that are needing to constantly change and pivot in order to be successful. And just a like simple example, look at COVID and restaurants, right? One of the coolest things that I saw during COVID was businesses or restaurants that were able to survive as a result of saying, you know what, we need to embrace online ordering. We need to maximize utilization of our kitchen and even create more diverse menus that are more sort of delivery oriented versus being served to a table. And I sit there and go, that was a brilliant level of change that we saw at a lot of restaurants that were able to survive the pandemic and hopefully continue to survive, and hopefully not only that, but thrive. So I think even like businesses that we see as being like very, very traditional, there's opportunities to say, how do we pivot and become successful or survive when things around you are.
While we're waiting for Neil to come back.
But I really, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Did I get
Neil,
lost?
you cut out briefly. I will just say
Sorry.
for our guests that don't know, we hear you and see you now. Although your company's based here in Philadelphia, I know that you are out of town right now, and you are about to be pummeled by a tropical storm. So if we lose you, we'll know why.
Yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, long story short, need to pivot, right? It's going to happen inevitably, I think, for every business. But if you're, a consistent business, you might not have that as frequently as like some of the businesses that are maybe in like a tech industry, for example. I think it really depends on what vertical you're.
Right. Thank you for that insight. I'm kind of use that to pivot a little bit to Michelle, just speaking a little bit of COVID. We don't need it to be the overarching topic here, but I know with Witty Gritty, kind of in the event industry, the pandemic had to, I guess, made people have to make a lot of adjustments and changes and adapt and sort of get new skills that weren't necessary at all before. During the past year and a little bit at Witty Gritty, how did you kind of navigate that with needing to master new skills related to more virtual event things as opposed to your normal?
Sure. Yeah. It's so nuts. So Michael yesterday gave me like the overview of the mastery curve, and I was thinking about this, and I think that the pandemic provided some type of splinter in my curve in a good way, like almost like I don't know, maybe a splinter is not the right thing, but a little offshoot, a little sprout, because our work is so reliant on people being in person. We quickly had to change to virtual, and then the big joke that I often make is that we all became like make pretend TV producers. So talk about feeling a little bit vulnerable and not knowing what you're doing. We've certainly worked with videographers. We took what we knew and applied it to the digital space, but we by no means had any deep experience in virtual event production, to the point where like our AV partner that we work very closely with on in-person things had to do the same exact thing for his business. So we were totally making it up, and we were really transparent with clients too, because they'd come to us and trust our ability to deliver something and figure it out, because they were also trying to figure it out. And that gave us some space and flex to actually like be more creative in a lot of ways, which was really great and exciting despite how devastating the pandemic had been. The other thing that also led to was a little more forgiveness. And with that said, as we were doing virtual productions over the months, we were pretty much like laughing with some clients saying like, if you saw the first one we did last summer, oh my gosh, like, and then other clients would say, well, we're so glad that we're getting you like 9 months later, because we're getting all like, you already worked out all the kinks, so so it really did come at a time too where doing a lot of event work, and we also do a lot of community engagement and marketing work, but we're a small shop, and it's easy to have burnout or want to have the need to like be, even for myself as a business owner, to find the space that challenges me a lot. And in a really odd twist of events, the pandemic really did that for us. So I do think that everything that we learned, we're still learning a lot of that, and now being able to couple that with what will be, more in-person elements that I think like the event space will be, I would like to think that it will be transformed in the long term, because we'll be able to we have like more tools and like toys to play with now in the toolbox to be able to like, create different types of, you know, what people keep coining as hybrid experiences, right? So like the mix of in-person and digital. And then the comment I made earlier about experiences, really pulling back and thinking about what's the experience that you want to create for people, and understanding that that doesn't always have to be in person. It doesn't have to be in a Zoom room either. It's sort of a 360 type of thing that we can approach. And I feel like with all of that said, it's allowing us to get more creative, and it's also it's opening up our clients to be more open to that type of creativity as well.
Great.
I actually have a follow-up question, if that's okay. Can I jump in here? So you said something interesting about like using your mastery, and it wasn't quite those words. I forget exactly what you just said, but verbatim. But it kind of sparked this question in my mind. Once you've mastered this, do you feel compelled? Do you have like a compulsion to leverage your mastery in your domain? Or once you've mastered it, are you kind of ready to then move on? Because I think kind of goes back to the change question you asked, Liza. But like, I feel compelled to use mine for a bit, but I will lead with that. I also, you know, I've reinvented Taman's product offerings and sort of the nature of the company over 14 years. We're on our fourth iteration of the business, you know, even though it's the same company, same name, similar clients, but we keep reinventing ourselves as technology changes, as the marketplace changes. So I don't always feel compelled to leverage everything I've mastered in the past, but do either of you feel like compelled to monetize all the investment you've made? You know?
I mean, I'll answer that. I think it really just comes down to the question of what's the value, right? Like if there's things that might feel antiquated, or you sort of advanced and leveled up because you mastered thing A, and that's a direct segue into thing B, but thing B is more valuable than thing A, you might leave that thing behind, right? So a simple example with our shop, you know, we start finding maybe 5 years ago that the nature of how we were building things was growing and a lot more advanced. Whereas when we started, we were actually producing a lot smaller websites for local businesses, and that's where our roots were. And we got to this weird point where like we had to make a decision, like, are we going to be the small local Bucks County shop, or are we going to go after bigger clients? And we decided to push to bigger clients, and we left a lot of services behind that really wouldn't fit our specialization for bigger clients. And it's kind of that like iterative business reinvention. But then the thing that we realized that didn't feel too good was we were leaving a lot of this really great customer base in the dust behind us. And it felt like we were alienating them, and they were great people, and we have this cool local reputation. So what we actually ended up doing was we created a whole separate business portfolio to service that space. We figured out how to make our processes leaner, so that way we could continue to offer a good product. And then what's been neat is we can actually use that sort of offering as a way of training more like junior developers, junior designers, and get them sort of like familiar with our processes. And it, from a business standpoint, it's still very profitable. So, you know, in that case, like we actually went back and forth. We kind of started moving away from them, realized after about a year that was a mistake and we didn't like it. And then we figured out how do we bring it back better, more efficient, and aligned to that audience, but also create this like line in the sand of this is what Inverse Paradox is, and this is what this other business division is. So I think to answer your question more directly, I think you have to be self-aware, and you need to evaluate. And, you know, in some cases, if there's value there, you continue to offer the thing that you master. Sometimes you leave it behind, but sometimes you might also find a creative solution in between that allows you to kind of do both, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that's Neil, that's like almost so in line with what we're experiencing right now with our work, because I almost want to, Michael, to your question, think about like, oh, like we're like foundation building, you know, and all the stuff we learned on the ground level is still there, and skills that we can move forward, but we'll adapt them and evolve them. But I'm coming up against the same exact stuff, Neil, where like the event planning and logistics stuff is so second nature to us. Like that is mastered, that's done. You know, like we know how to do that. Of course, we'll always improve it when improvements can be made, but that's the stuff that might feel a little bit like, okay, that's what we used to do a lot of, but where can we free up space to do more and evolve some of what we're trying to do. So yeah, Neil, I mean, you sort of captured exactly almost like where we're at mentally at Witty Gritty. So thanks.
It's a challenge.
Hearing you both talk too, I mean, it makes me think about because I also read a question that Jim D asked in the chat that I really liked, which is how do you put a marketable value on the things that we've mastered? And I think one of the things is that all of the things that I master now or that I work towards now are not necessarily totally divergent from the things I've done in the past. I feel like these things, like the minor topics that I feel like I've mastered or at least become more than proficient in, become the foundations for future things. But at the beginning, Liza, you talked about the definition of mastery, including this idea of foresight. And I think, Neil, I've heard you say that too about mastery in the past, like having foresight in a particular domain. Where like once you know enough about it, you're not just you don't just know all the historical stuff. You actually start to see the future a little bit. And I think like to Jim's question about like how do you put a value or a marketable value on it? I don't know if you mean like a monetary value, but I think where I've chosen to pivot the company or pivot my own skill sets to pursue a new mastery in a new domain has always been about I'm seeing the end of the road in an existing domain that I'm mastering or that I'm delivering on, and that the foresight there then leads me to how can I hop on a different path or fork my path, like Michelle said earlier, for something that has a longer road to it, and that the longevity of that skill that I want to build up or that domain I want to master, I think is how I start to assign value, and then it kind of goes back to the question of consistency, or change, people being resistant to change, where, I love change. I know that's not always common, but like, change for me is like, I eat it for breakfast, but that the idea that once there's a story, to your point, Neil, that staff who don't see the future, part of our jobs as leaders and masters in our domains is to also help people see that future, even if they haven't connected the dots themselves, that we can help tell the narrative on like, this is why we're pivoting. This is the long road this has. This is the opportunity it's opening up. And we don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen there, but we have foresight to know that this is the better path, and that the mastery of one or more domains leads me to believe strongly in this, and so far, not that I've been right every single time I've chosen to pivot to something, but that the mastery that leads to the foresight, I think, has given, good fodder for that decision making. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. That kind of dovetails into the question that it's kind of your same question, Mike, where there have been different pivot points in the life of Taman Inc., where you've decided to change from an IT firm to more like software development and now digital accessibility. Rock on with it. Do you have you've covered some of this, but anything that you left out about sort of your thinking and the why that led to the decision to make that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. I think I already covered sort of like seeing the end of the road or diminishing returns and looking for a more valuable thing to pursue that I'm also equally curious about. I will say there's sort of a couple of things. Like I've used the analogy in the past when I've talked publicly about this, like I've sort of climbed this gravelly hill and you're almost at the top. You feel like I've almost succeeded, and your hands are all bloody and your knees are bloody and your shirt's ripped, and you're like, I've almost made it to the top. And then this gravelly hill kind of becomes unstable and you slide all the way back down and you're like, I don't know if I can climb that hill again, and is it worth it? And sometimes the answer is no. And I think what sets entrepreneurs apart oftentimes is that they're willing to climb that hill sort of endlessly, but that also knowing when to pivot is important, and that maybe it's worth climbing another gravelly hill, to hopefully surmount it. So, each of the times that we've chosen to pivot, it's that I maybe slid backwards or had sort of a blow because there's a big industry shift, or a major manufacturer or provider in the space that we support, has made a radical shift in its strategy, and it affects us as a small business, and so we have to react to that. So that's been generally the genesis of why I've chosen to pivot. But when I hire folks and I'm looking for people that have mastery in a space, it doesn't always have to be in what we do, but that I think being a master in something, even one thing, demonstrates sort of the 3 C's that I look for when I hire folks, which is curiosity, commitment, and coachability. But I think commitment, curiosity being the starting point for mastery, and then commitment being the thing that carries you through the curve. For those that don't know the mastery curve, and you brought this up, Michelle, it's sort of like you go through this period of like on the y-axis is your skill level. No, sorry. On the y-axis is your enjoyment of it, and on the x-axis is your proficiency in it. And people get really excited and they feel great about it as their skill progresses a little bit, and they don't even know what they don't know, which is why they enjoy it. And then they hit this like doldrum of like not they know what they don't know, and you're in the grind and you're trying to figure all that out, and it can be frustrating and demoralizing. But if you have commitment and persistence through that, you can come out the other side where your enjoyment sort of has no limit, because you now not only know what you don't know, but you're starting to fill in all those gaps. Now you know the stuff, and you can leverage it, and it becomes very, very satisfying. So I don't know if maybe I diverted off the question too far, but
That's all right. That works. I'm gonna switch to a question that I like, which is sort of we're talking about a little bit of like maybe thought leadership stuff coming in, mastery, kind of like pushing stuff to places it hasn't been before. Y'all have obviously had a lot of success, which is great. Are there any times where like failure or pushback from folks who are maybe less willing to change or have been doing something a different way and think that's how you're supposed to do it? Anything like that played a part in your journeys, and maybe how did you deal with that? Whoever wants to go first. I see some pensive faces.
I'll be the bad guy. To be completely honest, I think everybody needs a fair chance and fair opportunity, and I've dealt with this again. My business, I've dealt with this on the school side. And the school side's especially interesting because you have people that are coming in there paying and investing to change and grow and hopefully reach a level of mastery. That's their goal, which means you can't come into something like a grad school and say, I'm going to be a student and not be willing to learn and not be willing to change. Otherwise, why are you here? Being the bad guy, I think, one of the, well, I'm sorry, I'll say the good guy thing first and then the bad guy thing. I think a real demonstration of mastery is your ability to teach, coach people, and get them over that hump, right? And that's a really important value to me. And you should be able to explain things in different ways. You should figure out, what that person's communication needs are, what their learning style is. And I think that's not just like talking as a professor. I think it's talking as a leader, as a business owner, or a manager. Those are really good qualities that you have to have, and a lot of that comes through your mastery, right? So like, but at the end of the day, there are people that you encounter that are inflexible, that don't want to change how they've been doing a thing because they've been doing it for years, or just don't have a willingness to learn. And I think that's where the bad guy part comes in, where I sit there and say, as a business owner, that ultimately affects the culture, that can impact other people on your team. And inevitably you come to a crossroads where you say, this person isn't cut out for the company because they don't share those values and they're not willing to work in parallel with the company. They're kind of an opposition. So that person may not be a good fit. At the same time, I will say that, even though I've been in the position where I've had to let people go because you hit that crossroads, and it's not as often as you'd think, it always feels like a personal failure, because to me, it's almost like my mastery for some reason is what, I wasn't able to get the person where I needed them to be. So I'm failing them too. And I always take that really personally, because I don't want to be letting people go. I don't want to be getting in the way of their future pursuits. I don't want them to not be advancing. And to me, I want people that work in our company because they want to grow, they want to advance, they want to become masters themselves. If that weren't the case, I probably would have a completely different business model where I would just be sort of subcontracting things out to other people, where I don't have the same connection to the people that work for me. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, Michelle or Mike, any thoughts?
Sure, I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, I think I see it as like two sides of the coin too, a little bit in that question, meaning that I think when we come up against that with clients or like external type partners, and we're starting to flag, oh, they're not willing to change or they're used to their ways, that signals to me that it's time for us to pivot or ask ourselves, how do we make sure that we continue to make space for clients who are open to creativity and things, right? So that's kind of a signaling thing on the external side of things. I think more internally for our team culture, the one thing that comes to mind is we have we embrace like lessons learned as part of what we constantly are sharing with each other. So just constant like personal or professional lessons learned. We share them out every week at our team check-ins. And I think somehow that does something to open up like what people are feeling and thinking in a way that's really open. And then everybody is able to react or give feedback or support. And I feel like it does something to help with just, it's structured because we have it built in our check-ins, but we do it so frequently that it really does open us up to be able to, I don't know, like kind of flag some of those things and not let them build up if somebody's feeling like, oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes, or I don't want to change, or I tried something different and it didn't work out. Am I going to get in trouble? So I do think that, I think that, I mean, that's like one thing I feel like that's been effective for us to all just better communicate with each other and maybe reach some of us who sometimes feel like, oh, I can't change, or I'm a little bit nervous to try something different. Sure.
Do you ever get pushback, Mike, or anything like that from your enlightened ideas? And
oh yeah, like I'm at odds with a lot of people on a lot of things, but generally not in a negative way. Just can you ask the question again, because I want to make sure that I'm answering it more truthfully.
Sure. I believe the question that I asked was sort of a rambling one, and it had to do with any role that's sort of like pushback or not failure, but you have these ideas and they're great and they can lead to great things, and maybe they're not always received positively. Has that pushback?
Yeah.
Well, how has it shaped your journey?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll use an example from digital accessibility, which is the thing that we're currently focused on and that I'm sort of currently trying to master, right? In that a lot of people find it threatening to their view of the world, which I know sounds kind of like, how would that seem threatening, making stuff that's more inclusive for people to use, right? But it does challenge the foundations of what people were either taught in school, or if they became a master, let's say in design, and then we're saying, by the way, you've been doing it all wrong for 30 years, like it can be very challenging, right? And there's a lot of resistance to it, ironically. And so I think the way that I've tried to overcome that, and I've really put language around this over the last year, is this like mindset skill set ladder. The idea that if I can help someone who I'm at odds with around a thing that I'm now currently very passionate about, like digital accessibility, if I can make a small mindset shift from one place to another place, that person is kind of open to then building some new skills. And once they build those new skills, I think they start to see opportunity for themselves in an area where they say, oh, this is something that I can pursue. It doesn't seem so scary. And with those new skills, oftentimes come new questions, which then allows for another shift in mindset, like a little further in one direction or another, right? And then with that mindset shift, that's the curiosity that piques further depth in skill building. And so going back between skill building and mindset growth, suddenly you find at sometime like 8th, 9th rung on the ladder, you're mastering this thing, and that could come from anybody. And so I try to bring people along at the pace at which they're prepared, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. I'll say I'm in a similar line of work and I'm doing the same thing, and I appreciate that level of insight, even not on our normal work roles, that I get it from you. So I will say we're getting close to the end of our normal panel discussion time. So I'm going to ask our last question, and then afterward we are going to have some audience Q&A and discussion. So feel free to stick around for that if you are able. So last but certainly not least, for each of you, Are there any skills that each of you are learning or want to work towards right now? It can be business related, pleasure related, kind of what you're working on now or what you want to start working on. Mike, how about you let us know that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already said that, digital accessibility has become like a real passion of mine, and it's kind of going beyond digital accessibility into inclusive design and the idea of like making experiences that are approachable and usable and useful for everybody. And it's big and it's hard, but it's also like deeply rewarding for me. It aligns my personal values with my professional goals. So, maybe it's trite to just say, I love what I do, but like I love what I do.
Sure, trite and true. We'll take that.
Yeah.
Neil, how about you?
Oh man, this is definitely an on the spot question because I find that I go down so many random rabbit holes. But when I think about my company right now, um, we have a niche that we carved out primarily built around WordPress as us being more of a production agency, and then also e-commerce. Like I said, the two buzzwords: WordPress and e-commerce. The thing that I'm interested in doing more of, and I've been researching this in different tactics. I'm passionate about learning and how people learn, and a lot of what's happened with COVID has made me a little bit more aware of how digital technology is being used to teach people. And the irony here is that I received all of my higher ed through online platforms when it was really, really early, because I was a terrible student. I'm still a terrible student. So sitting in a classroom was my nightmare. So I did everything online. And it was very asynchronous and disconnected. Now all of a sudden, I'm back to when I was in college, and I was teaching my students the last year through Zoom sessions and a whole bunch of new tools and platforms. But sorry, a little bit of a tangent, but now it's coming full circle where I'm saying I want to work with my company to say, how do we do more in the space of like building LMSs and really good learning platforms and incorporate tools into the websites that we're creating? How do we help companies be able to offer things like more webinars and paid for services where they can share their knowledge, because I think that they have products there or services there that they haven't even explored. So that's been an interest of mine. A lot of that has been a result of COVID and then having this sort of self-awareness. So we work with a few LMS platforms already, but that's just like skimming the surface. The real innovation is saying, how does that fit into our clients' business models, and help them incorporate a variety of technologies so they can deliver these services. So I've been teaching myself a lot more about that, like the technical and design execution of learning management systems and instructional design, which really is my background, which is kind of connecting the dots of my agency experience and my professor experience to kind of say, okay, this is now going to be married in the middle, and maybe that's something we'll have in the next year or so to start offering.
Sounds good to me. Michelle, do you have anything rolling around in your mind, professionally or personally,
Sure.
that you're trying to master?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of what I mentioned earlier about kind of like the new world now that we're entering with the opportunity and the opportunity around hybrid kind of experiences and what that means. And I think the thing actually connects a little bit to accessibility is that what I think I learned over the last year and what our team learned is that if done right, incorporating technology, live stream, digital space into what would typically be an in-person thing really opens up, to more people, wider national, global audiences, but also for people who may not easily be able to get around to come to something, or for many different reasons, right? So it's making me think a lot about how technology has the ability to be very accessible only if we're being thoughtful about it, right? So on the digital divide side of things, as long as somebody has access to secure network and the technology to be able to access, and then also to what Tamin does, and full disclosure, that Witty Gritty is working with Tamin, and that is one thing I'm very excited about, is that as we're working with you all, we're learning, and we're not going to unlearn that stuff. We're going to apply it to all of our work, and it makes me think about how much more impactful our community engagement approach can be. So that's what I'm trying to mull around. And I think part of that, I guess, if I were to sum it up, is really like, what does everything that happened in the last year and a half, how do we sort of redefine what community engagement and connection really is? And how can we use all these sort of like things that have opened up our eyes in the last year and a half to make things better? So that's what I've been chewing on. I'll let you know what I come up with.
Sure, I'm excited to see it. Well, thank you all so much. We have hit 12:30, so we're officially transitioning over to our audience question and discussion time. I know some people might have to leave for other things, and we understand that, but if you do have the ability to hang around, we would love to open up the chat as well as the video chat just for discussion. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to take yourself off mute or post them in the chat.
So I've never been accused of being shy, everyone. My name is Jim Dowd. I'm a resident of Landenberg, Southern Chester County. So first off, thank you for offering this wonderful experience. It's been very insightful for me to listen to the thoughts and comments, as well as read those great ideas that are showing up in the chat. I appreciate the response to the question I asked about, how you put a value, a marketable value on mastery. And I got the responses were very interesting. I wasn't expecting a few. And just to offer a comment as a follow-up, what I think that you've kind of hit on here is something that's extremely valuable and marketable in a lot of different ways. When you think of a professional mastery, to me, I view that as a superpower. Someone has developed something that they didn't have before that is extremely powerful and useful to someone else around them. The danger is keeping it a secret, right? If you have a superpower and nobody knows, it really isn't a superpower, right? So when I say put a value, a marketable value, I really am talking about how do you encourage those who work for you, those who you work with, those who you work, along with, or your peers in the market, those who you support. How do you let them know that you or someone on your team or your organization or your company, whatever, has developed this superpower and they can now take advantage of it? That was more of what I was going for there. So I'm always interested to hear the ideas of how people advertise the new capability that they have developed within their organization and how you kind of exploit that. It may be handing out capes, or cool shirts, but those are the kind of things, because what that does is it encourages others to kind of, work on their next superpower so that they can, be recognized and also have value as well. So I'll leave you with that.
So I'll jump in on that one, because I don't think I was thinking about this question because I thought it was a great question. And I'm actually going to steal your idea of capes, because I think Michael knows this. Anything I can slap an Inverse Paradox logo on, I'm definitely going to do it. So you might find that on some call, there's someone with an Inverse Paradox cape hanging from them. So thank you for that. But I think what it really comes down to is you kind of alluded to this, is that you have to take your mastery, and I think you need to define two things, and this kind of falls in line with like a product design process. You need to say, like, well, what is that you ultimately want at the end of the day that's going to give you joy or satisfy your goals? So some sort of metric, right? So for me as a professor, I'm a professor, I'm an administrator. The reason why I do it, honestly, is because I feel immense joy when I find out my students get these really incredible jobs and they've found career advancement. That for me is really, really valuable. So that's why I do it. I know that's why I do it. But I think a lot of people don't have the self-awareness to say, what is it that is going to give me that joy? And then how do I work backwards to say, what product or service do I need to offer to get me to that joy? So you have a product or service and you got a metric that actually satisfies that, right? And I think that's ultimately what you're talking about. And for me, like, I'm giving you a bigger example of me as a professor, but even for people on my team, as they're maybe developing a new skill set or they express an interest, I say, okay, cool. You have this interest. There's an area that can be brought into Inverse Paradox, a new service offering. Go learn it, master it. Let's start offering it as a service offering. And then for them, maybe that becomes a promotion, a lead title, higher salaries, right? Exactly, yeah. Because they're embracing a thing. But I think you have to work backwards and say, what do I want the outcome for myself, or was the outcome for that other person? And then how do we turn it into a product and service? And then what do you need to do in order to get it to the point that you can confidently offer that thing, whatever that thing is, right?
Thanks, Neil. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I can jump in here too, I have I don't know if this is helpful, Jim. I will say that I have a lot of interests. Like there's not much that I can't find that can't pique my curiosity. So I've always tried to align the things that I'm going to pursue, the things that I'm going to allow my curiosity to blossom in, with things that are also in demand in the market. So maybe like I cheated a little bit by saying I'm only going to really professionally pursue things that I know are in demand. What I would say, I've had kind of the opposite problem, not so much getting the word out, but like turning away work that would also be well aligned with my curiosities, but maybe wouldn't pay well. And so I find a very little bit of communication around, hey, I do this and I'm good at it. I mean, very minimal amount, has led to a couple of interested clients, which has led to paying jobs, which the word of mouth, I mean, we've never had to really go into a really difficult sales, season trying to acquire work. I would say more often than not, it's been hard to discern what are the things, what are the jobs or the opportunities that I'm going to allow us to go after. But that may not be useful for like skills that are not necessarily always highly in demand. You have to somehow connect with the people that also want that service, or want that product. So I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like I don't have a good answer to what you're looking for.
No, it does. I guess kind of what I was going for, and Neil hit on it as well, is we're all, just it's human nature to want to get better at stuff, right? And as you develop an ability to master one specific area versus another, it's kind of a waste when you can't then take that and use that in the form of like a superpower, I keep saying, right? So that, to be able to encourage a culture where, you certainly want to, encourage people to develop new capabilities, new skills, and marketing them doesn't always mean going after a particular business opportunity. It means being, improving your brand in the market, right? So improving, the way others perceive your organization, your company, or even, the people that you hang around with, right? It's about being in a better place and leveraging that. So encouraging that kind of behavior and the recognition for achievement goes a long way to increasing your value or your company's value in the market. And your market may be your company, internally, just going for that promotion or that next opportunity. That's kind of what's coming. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Jim, if I can just keep playing on this, because I think there's a couple of interesting things to unpack here. I have another business too that I'm a minority partner in, and it's a product company. And the majority owner in that business is very introverted. He's learned how to speak publicly, but I think one of sort of the unspoken secrets of success typically in America is extroversion is valued over introversion by a lot. And so those of us that pursue things that are also perfectly willing to just jump in front of others and talk about it, oftentimes don't have to worry about getting the word out. And I've talked to this other partner about, well, if you're introverted, how do you get your quiet voice heard? How do people know about you? Because you can be quietly excellent at something and not be comfortable about putting yourself out there. And so sort of, I would say generally, that requires more work. If you're introverted, but you're also really good at something, you have to be more intentional about getting out there, or at least about finding avenues, whether it's publishing and writing and doing it in sort of a less face-to-face or interpersonal way. But I think that's it's an interesting point. I don't want to, Jim, you're not shy, obviously, and neither are the three panelists that we have here, right? So, but it would be really interesting to pull a very introverted person into this conversation to ask them, how do they get the word out for themselves? And I don't have an answer to it. I'm more just sort of putting that question out there to the.
Well,
yeah.
I'll quickly tack onto that. I'm totally fine speaking in front of a group, as we can see today. And I'm really good when people say, hey, have you met Neil? But I am the worst wedding guest and I hate business networking events. When those things happen, I stand in a corner with a drink and I only talk to people when they approach me, right? So like I'm probably on the fence there where like I don't consider myself extroverted because I don't I don't do those things. I hate doing those things. I always tell people I'm actually much better as being like the wizard behind the curtain than the guy out in front of the crowd. My answer to that has always been, let me hire people that have that skill set. You know, maybe it's somebody in business development, maybe it's somebody who who's a great developer to go out there and talk. And then when we go to those events, they're the ones that go out fishing and go find the people, and they're showcasing Inverse. And then they're like, hey, have you met Neil? And then they bring me in. So I fully am aware of the fact that, and I saw someone here mention ambivert, which is definitely where I fall into it. I'm selectively extroverted. But I bring the people out there with me who are going to say, hey, have you met Neil? Have you, have you ever heard Neil talk? Do you want to invite him to do a thing? Whatever the case may be, because the minute I'm teed up, then I'm generally comfortable. And to be quite honest, Michael, that's how you arranged today. This was, an idea you had, and then you were like, Neil, you want to do a thing? I'm like, yeah, cool. But would I go out there and do this myself? Probably not,
Great point. Thank you, Neil. Karen, I see that you've had your patient little yellow hand raised for a while. What have you got to say?
Thank you. So really, I think one of the things that I just wanted to mention and see what everyone else thought about this too was that ability to pivot. So I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career, and I've had to pivot a lot. In fact, recently I had this whole thing where I was like, I really want to lead a web team. I want to lead the cause in accessibility in my organization. And because of the nature of the organization, I was never going to get kind of the place or position that I wanted, just because of the way the organization is set up. That position didn't exist. It's government. It's almost impossible to create a position in government. So I chose to pivot. And after many years of having my own business, I decided the pivot there was to start up my business again and do it on my own. But I think that, pivots don't have to be that big. They can be really small. So when I started in my professional life, I was actually doing architecture, which is totally not what I do now. But there are elements of that previous career that I have kind of wrapped into what I do now. And so there's like a thread of my original kind of skills and experience that I've built off of, even if they were different careers. So I went from architecture to web design, and now I'm focused on usability, accessibility, and inclusion and diversity in the web world. And so some of that was really easy to pivot to, and some of it wasn't. But I feel like there's a kind of continuous thread throughout all of those pivots. So I was curious what others, the group thought about that and like their experience.
Sure. Anybody from the panel can answer, or if anybody just from the audience wants to answer, go right ahead.
I mean, Karen, I think that's an important point to make, that the pivots, like when we say pivot, doesn't have to be this like revolutionary big thing at all. I mean, it makes me think of a really small example with us, and that there were a couple of years where we were taking on marketing work to basically do full marketing plans for organizations. And it was so painful for us to take on that task because we could not compartmentalize ourselves just to focus on the marketing without asking all these other questions about the organization's culture, how they ran things. And all of a sudden we're like writing make pretend business plans, and we just couldn't, like, it just wasn't the right fit for us. It's like a energy suck almost, right? So like we still offer a bunch of marketing services, and now we just do it in a more tighter, more focused way. And it took us a little bit to figure out what that meant and how to talk about it, but it wasn't an astronomical kind of change. It's not something that we had to like necessarily rebrand on our website or really put out there too widely. So I do think that all of these little small pivots that we might not even realize are pivots, especially after the word pivot became so trendy in the last year. I think they all when we can take a look and like almost catalog them, I think it can be very telling to like maybe what some of our future steps might hold.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so earlier, Mike, and all three of you are employers. You mentioned that curiosity is one of the 3 C's that you look for in a prospective employee. Can you talk about, as employers, how you see that curiosity, encourage it, and reward it in your employees?
Yeah, it's a great question. But I don't want to, I mean, Neil or Michelle, do either of you want to go first?
I'll let you go first. I mean, these are your 3 C's.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so as far as curiosity, I mean, like there's a couple of very sort of straightforward mechanical ways that we support it, like making sure that we're investing in ongoing professional development. I find that forcing it on people doesn't really work well. So, you know, we kind of make it optional, but that, you know, there's a lot that as an employer, we're willing to invest in individuals, monetarily, time away from work, flexible schedules to pursue whatever it's going to be, but not so much, you know, so anyway, yeah, so there's that mechanics of it. But there's also like, I don't put a ton of stock in certifications. Sometimes they're necessary and important, and oftentimes they can feel good for people to pursue. But I'm much more interested when people have a genuine curiosity in a thing and start to go read on their own. And so one of the things we've tried to do is kind of marry this idea of a culture of gratitude with then like at least I try to like push that into congratulating people or having gratitude for when people are pursuing something that they have curiosity in. So, you know, I think it's hard to just say we're going to foster curiosity by telling people to be more curious. You know, it kind of has to be rewarded, and so that comes with like encouragement, public acknowledgement, investment in time and money, of time and money into people. But yeah, I think it's also hard to like necessarily inspire curiosity if people don't have a little bit of that spark in them to begin with. You know, so we try to hire and select for folks that have some natural curiosity to begin with, and then we try to nurture it, right? If that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else has a different experience with like, have they been able to inspire someone who was not curious before to become a curious individual?
Yeah, I would say I think that maybe I will fully admit this is probably one of my weak points. You know, I think I'm very good when people are curious and they're inspired, and you know, I can help people capitalize on that. But some people, you know, maybe that's not just in their sort of DNA, for lack of a better way of putting it. That's where it is a struggle, and to try to incentivize, inspire that, and try to bring that out of a person, I think can be tough. And I'll just, you know, share a personal anecdote. My, you know, I have a few friends that, you know, just kind of have jobs and they work, and it's very hard for me to understand that, because I'm the type of person where, you know, it's that natural curiosity. I always want to do something new. I go down these rabbit holes and I get obsessed. And I have friends that they're like, well, I have a job. And I'm like, you have a career? And they're like, no, I have a job. Like it's just a job. It's a way of paying bills, because their personal interests, or maybe their family, their hobbies, and things that have nothing to do with what we would consider to be like professional mastery or anything professionally related. And it took me a long time to understand that that's okay. Like, it's totally okay that you can be a person that says, what I do professionally is not where I get my joy. It's a means to an end. My joy lives in these other areas. And maybe they have mastery in those things, but purely a personal thing. And it's like, I got friends that are like surfers and skateboarders, and they still do that thing. And it's like, that's totally cool. So I think it goes back to Michael's point that I sit there and go, from a culture standpoint, I'm looking for people that are really committed, people that are curious to be in the company from the beginning, because I think that's what helps our company grow and advance. And I hope that's what helps everybody in our company feel joy and continue to advance. And I've had some people work for me now for over 10 years. And I think that's something you don't see frequently in like tech or design industry. And I think it's because we're constantly challenging and constantly offering advancement and positive encouragement. So long story short, not that I'm trying to, you know, cheat anybody out that's just looking for a job. I'm looking for people that are in it for the long haul, that are curious, that are looking to advance, because I think it's an important attribute to the company's culture, and it's important to me. And those are the people I want to work with as well.
Before we get to your question or response there, Amanda, I just want to throw something out there too, that we talk about curiosity, and I think there's this sort of mythos around it, that like somebody has to be curious in order to like save the world or disrupt an industry or blow something up. And I really do not think that's for everybody. Like, and just so I think it's not a contradiction at all to what you're saying, Neil. I'm agreeing 100%, but that there are people who just need to do the job and walk the path, and they're maybe not going to advance, but they're curious about their domain and they just want to go deeper into it. And that's okay. Like, I want to foster that too. Not everyone has to be the change maker. They just to become the master in it is sometimes sufficient. But if they're just doing it for a job and there isn't curiosity in the depth of even their narrow domain, like that's kind of a roadblock for me, or sort of it's just a big downer.
Yeah.
I really want people that want to know more about the thing, whether it's about a lot of things or whether it's depth in the one area that they want to stay in. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I fully agree with that.
Yeah. Sorry, Amanda. Do you want to go next?
No, just want to give Michelle a chance to jump in if you had.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Yourself.
Oh,
If
no,
not,
it's
that's
fine. I mean, no, I mean, I feel very aligned with what Neil and Michael just shared. I think, our team at Witty Gritty are a team of independents and by nature are very entrepreneurial. So being able to make space and have everybody share and have us do what we can to foster everybody's pursuits, and even serve as a bit of a stepping stone in that journey is really important to us culturally on a work level. And I think on a personal level, part of me is like, if I can connect somebody to somebody that they wouldn't otherwise have met or experienced something that they wouldn't otherwise have come across in their world, I feel like that's like a small win enough in the pursuit of fostering curiosity. And this won't be a surprise to anybody who knows me, but sometimes that just means like, if I can get you to do karaoke when you're so resistant to it, then I've unlocked and unleashed the key, and I can keep helping you from there.
fabulous. Now we have about 3 minutes, so I'll just quickly jump to Amanda. Let it rip.
Oh, shoot. Okay, this might be longer than a 3-minute answer for most of y'all. So this is a question that as an employee, I get, but I don't think that CEOs necessarily get this question very often. So I wanted to ask, part of mastery is making mistakes and learning from them. And I'm wondering if y'all could shortly speak to a time when you invested time or money into something and realized it was a mistake or not what customers were looking for. How did you make lemons out of the lemonade and carry on?
12-word answers, go.
Ooh. I'll just put out there, I think sometimes there is a time where you just cut your losses and abandon a thing if it's not working. I think that's totally okay. I think it's okay to admit to failure as long as you learn from the failure, right? So to me, I generally go with the school of thought of saying, okay, making lemons out of lemonade is admitting defeat, learning from that defeat, because the learning you get out of it could be the value in what you invested. And that's okay. I think that too many people are trying to jam a square peg into a round hole and say, I have to have this thing, it has to be positive and yada, yada. And I go, sometimes it is okay to cut your losses if you grow and advance from that, because that can be the outcome. And I think that for some folks, that's not maybe tangible enough to say that, because you want something a little bit more gratifying. But I sit there and go, I've always been somebody that learns the hard way. I learned through failure. So that's cool by me. There's nothing wrong with that. And I have made mistakes that have cost tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. And I just sit there and go, okay, not going to do that again. And then, we figure out what a new process is or a new experiment, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, Neil, I'll keep it brief. When I first tried to pivot the company to building software, I didn't know a lot about it to start. And we brought some people in that, had more experience than I did in it, but I didn't really know where to invest my dollars or what to watch out for there. and we lost over $500,000 on one job. It was a very, very, very painful lesson. I don't even know how we survived it, but I was committed to delivering, and so we got the job done for the client, just at a massive loss to us. And it took like a year for me to lick my wounds from that and want to go back to it. But we did, and we went back to it with, at least I did. I went back to it with eyes open, and with sort of different controls in place, and felt like, I was in that zone where I had not mastered that domain of building software, and really rough lesson. But I feel like I came out the other side, like encouraged, and or at least with a strong desire to like master that thing. Like that beat me, and I'm like, I will not let it beat me. And there's this like exuberance for success in that drove me.
I'll just offer one
Jim,
piece
yeah.
on to tag on to what you just said. Amanda, the one thing that I've learned in my many, many years in business is, there's a concept in sales. They refer to it as, win fast, lose fast. Same thing applies here. It's, learn something new fast or fail at it fast, right? Don't beat yourself up. Don't continue. Some of us get a little obsessed from time to time trying to get that thing that we were after, and knowing when you're not going to get there sooner than later is extremely valuable in so many ways. And that's where a lot of careers kind of go off the rails, because it's not an easy thing to recognize, especially when you're focused and really trying hard to get there. So
yeah,
having the ability to even have those around you that'll give you that nudge and say, hey, let it go, move on to the next one. That's really what's key.
It's interesting, Jimmy, bring that up. And we talked about foresight earlier, and I lacked foresight at the time. Had no idea how much I was really in for, and now I have foresight. I can look at a software, a development job, whether it's an application or a website or a kiosk or whatever it is, and be like, there's no money in that one. There's money in this one. Like, there's this mastery of having done it for enough, having done enough times, failed and succeeded both, learned how to predict failure early and either fix it or abandon it. But that comes with experience, and it takes time to master that kind of thing.
Very true. Very good questions. Thanks, everybody. We're right at the end of our time, so I'll throw it over to Marty to wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Liza. I am so appreciative of this time and of the gift of insight from all of our panelists as well as our guests. If we could have some, as my new friend Karen just mentioned, European snaps for them, that would be great. Hand claps, etc. That's fantastic. We really appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for this time that you've given us today. And we are looking to do more of these. So if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, thoughts that you'd like to contribute, I encourage you. It was just posted in the chat. If you could take a minute to just do our survey, it would be really, really appreciative. We'd love to get all of your thoughts. If you liked this format, it's not terribly different from a monthly meetup that we do as well. So I'll encourage you to check that out if you want to join us for our Taman lightning groups, where we bring a lot of different speakers in. We also have a lot of guest participation, so you can be on the lookout for that. And one more shameless log rolling from me is that we've recently launched our podcast on digital accessibility at Taman called Article 19. You can find it in most places where you get your podcast, Amazon, Spotify, etc. So you can check all of that out that's going on at Taman. We look forward to doing a lot more of these in the coming months, and we hope that you'll join us again then too. So thanks for spending some time with us. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
More Bill Withers.